My name's Robyn. I've been doing some stuff with the rookies. You can see some of my videos on their YouTube channel. I'm an HoD of an animation department. I work for a media company, and they've just been sharing some of my videos, and I've been doing some stuff with them, so I'm going to also start doing these Twitch streams. I'll get better at it, I promise. This is my first time. I'm a total noob at Twitch and live streaming, so let's just get over these first few bumps and hopefully it will get better. So I'm a 3D generalist. I've been in the industry for 10 years now. I also do motion graphics and 2D animation and illustration, and I'm going to be doing some reviews and giving feedback. So I'm going to take some of the clips and animations that people have submitted to the rookie site, and I'm going to give some feedback and just constructive criticism on those clips. So I have one here. Let me just get this open. So I have this clip by Ludovine Loyes. I hope I pronounced your name properly. I'm really sorry if I didn't. And you're ranked as a player. So there's debut, player, contender, rookie, and pro. And this over here is a clip of somebody throwing a ball. So it says this is the first step of an animation, and the exercise was throwing a ball. So obviously it's still quite rough because it's a first step in the animation, but it's a little past the blocking phase if you did do a blocking phase. We do have some in-betweens there. Check it again. Cool. So I'm going to head over to Sync Sketch, where I'll be putting in some notes and just little drawings to show you what I'm talking about when I'm giving my feedback. So we've got a pretty good base action here. I like how she's drawn her hand backwards. There's that pause where she sort of gathers her energy to throw the ball. And then there's some hair swing in there you can see, and then quite a dramatic follow through on the action where she leans over the leg and then snaps back up quite suddenly to check out where the ball is going. So let's just start at the beginning. I'm going to go through frame by frame. So you see here, the action starts quite suddenly. It's kind of pretty much immediate that she starts to draw her hand back over there. There's a bit of a lack of anticipation there, and it would be great to just include a bit more of that mental and physical preparation that comes in when a character is about to do quite a big or calculated action. Something that they plan or map out, like throwing a ball, because you don't just like toss a ball usually without thinking about where it's going. Especially here, you can see that she's actively looking at where she's throwing. So a bit more of that thought, that anticipation would be really great to give the movement and the whole action a bit more impact, and to kind of let the viewer know that something big is coming, a big action. It's not an involuntary or a subconscious action like breathing or something like that. So there is some thought in it. She'll want to plan the trajectory of the ball. So she'll look ahead first and plan actually where she's throwing it to. So it'd be awesome if that was included in the shot. It doesn't need to be anything dramatic, just like a second or so where she looks and focuses on her goal, and then she'll start leaning back on that back leg that's going to take on her weight, and she'll start drawing her arm back before she actually gets into the whole big movement. So as she moves backwards, she'll start actually shifting her weight onto her back leg as she prepares to do that action. She kind of starts lifting her front leg and her throwing arm as well as the front arm all at the same time. So there's a bit of twinning. I don't know if there's a word for like threeing, I don't know. So it's like twinning because all these things are happening at the same time. They're not really offset. So some offsetting over there would definitely strengthen the shot a bit so that they're not all moving at the same time. So she'd shift her weight for balance, and then she'll start moving her throwing arm and then that front leg. So that would come afterwards. And then kind of like a baseball pitcher. If you've ever seen a baseball pitcher throw, this reminds me a lot of that, actually, how she lifts her front leg, and then that front arm for that extra power for the throw that acts as a sort of counterweight to throwing the ball. So I'm just looking at her back arm over here, and it kind of just goes from point A to point B straight back. And it would be great if there were a few more arcs in the movement. I mean, you know, most things will happen in arcs. Any sort of movement, even just turning your head, it goes in an arc. Your arm coming back, it would go in an arc. So including more arcs will make it look a bit more natural. It's better to have the elbow arc down closer to the body first and then come up. And then also to include some follow through and overlapping action with the wrist and the hand, because it feels a little rigid at the moment here. So going through this motion over here, her hand would actually be more like that as she pulls it back, and then as it comes up here, it'll flick back with that follow through. That'll give a little bit more weight to the action, a little bit more fluidity to it, because it's just a little bit robotic at the moment. So one thing that I did notice, like the first time I played it through, is that her back is a little bit, it's a bit of an unnatural curve to the back over here. Especially with the sort of stance that she's in. It's quite concave, and it would actually be a bit more convex with the way her spine would be working as a human at that angle, and that hip part is curving out quite drastically over here, which it ends up with a bit of a awkward silhouette there. So just always when you're working on a shot, make sure that you're just aware of the silhouette and how it looks, because it always needs to be appealing. Like every shot that you work on, you need to be thinking of the appeal of the shot. So also over here, it feels like the weight is a little bit off. Her balance wouldn't actually be steady over here. She'd actually probably fall backwards onto her butt. You can see if you just imagined a plumb line like that, she'd be a little bit overbalanced and she would just fall right over. So if you just moved her over slightly so that her butt was here, and then the weight was evenly distributed onto her foot. So I noticed also here, if I play it through, for me at least, when she pulls back like that, over there, her hair stands out quite a lot because the timing is it's a little bit off, and I get that maybe you were trying to get some follow through on that, which is great. Always be thinking about the hair and all those little things following through on an action, but it's just a few frames too late. And it also just feels quite heavy. It's like this big piece of hair rather than these individual lighter strands. Hair isn't usually so heavy, so it actually wouldn't be moving that drastically. Because even though it's a big movement, it's not really a violent movement, and the hair's reacting like it's a lot more heavier than it really is. So over here, between its frame 19 and frame 20, you can see that there's a very sudden snap to her back there. And that's quite eye-catching because it's so sudden. So if she's changing her posture that way, it would be a lot more gradual. You wouldn't have it in a one frame snap like that. It sort of just inverts. So it would be good to just add a little more ease into that and just spread it out over a few frames so it's not quite so robotic. It's a little more human and natural. So this is all good, but I just noticed here again with the silhouette, her elbow, the angle of her elbow over here, it just seems a little unnatural, seems a little bit awkward, almost like her arm is maybe dislocated or something. If you had this purely as like black on white, like it was her silhouette, it would definitely look a little awkward. And just be aware of that. If you've chosen a particular camera angle, again, appeal needs to come into it. So even if it looks right from a different angle, because also when we're working with 3D, it's very easy to think in 3D, but when somebody is watching your animation, they're really watching it 2D. They're not seeing it from the other angle. So whatever angle you decide to have your camera at, your animation needs to look good at that angle at all times. So just be aware of stuff like this. Even if this is actually a natural angle from a different perspective, from here, from this camera angle, it does look just a little bit awkward. So again, that's where silhouette comes into it, and just making sure that it's an appealing shot at all the different stages of it. So this is good. I like how she kind of pauses here and then gathers some energy, but then you notice the ball leaves her hand already here, and if that actually happened in reality, I mean, the ball would just kind of fall down behind it, which it would be pretty freaking funny if that was like you were going for like a comedic shot. So she's kind of being so dramatic and pulling back and putting all this power into throwing the ball, and then she drops it behind her and she kind of ends up looking ahead of her and it's chilling there behind her. That'd be pretty funny, but I don't think that's what you're going for here, obviously, because then you see the ball here after that. So she is meant to throw it, and that was the intention, but you do notice that it leaves her hand over here. So just watch out for small details like that. It's easy to get lost in everything else that you're working on, but people are going to notice stuff like that. And you can kind of, when it's not traveling in the hand the whole way through, it should actually still be in the hand here and then travel forward. And that would just make it feel a little bit more realistic, because even if the eye doesn't pick up the fact that the ball left her hand over there, there's something in the back of your mind that can see that there's something not really realistic behind the weight of it and the way the ball is moving. So the body does a nice arc in this movement here, but the arms feel just a little bit rigid. There isn't much follow through on them or on the wrists. And if you just look here, this joint here especially, and this one actually, they're kind of just staying rigidly exactly the same the whole way through. And if she was throwing a ball that way, especially with that power behind it, there would be that momentum still traveling through her arms, if you get what I'm saying. So if you throw something really hard, your arm kind of follows through all the way in that arc. It doesn't just sort of stop. It kind of stops there and then it stays at that exact same angle for the joint, and the same for this arm as well. So I would just put a bit more follow through and fluidity on those arms, and just think about the kind of the power that's going through the movement that your character is making. So there's all this energy getting exerted into your limbs, especially for something like throwing a ball or any sort of sports or athletic thing, something you're putting a lot of power behind. That power doesn't just stop once you've done the movement. It's going to carry on. There's always that follow through, and that's kind of a golden rule of animation, is that there's going to be follow through. So just think about stuff like that, and that's really going to help characters feel a lot more natural, more human, and less robotic. I would also just maybe put a bit more into the hips, the rotation of the hips. They feel quite stiff as well, and that would also help. So over here, when her leg comes so straight, that's a bit of an overextension. And also again, there would be follow through on such a violent sort of movement. So she would come forward onto her leg and it would bend. And then she could settle back into the position if that's the position you're going for it to end on. But usually that leg would definitely have a bit of a bend to it. It's a little too straight there, and she needs that, again, that follow through, and she needs to settle into the action. She needs to ease into her sort of docking position. So I would just have her kind of move forward slightly, overshoot on that movement, and then settle back onto the back leg. And also over there, as she comes up, she could move back a little bit and settle her weight. So just again, be aware of the weight distribution over there. It feels like it's not quite on either of the legs, but it's not quite evenly balanced. And she just needs a little more settle over there. She could even possibly shift back onto her leg, and her front leg could come forward a little, because it does look like a little bit of an uncomfortable or awkward position for her to be in. So again, over here, as she comes up, I would just add a little more follow through on the wrists over here as they come up. So just kind of bend the wrists, and you could also have the arms come down a little because they're still feeling a little stiff, and then they would come back up even here. Still, this wrist could be bent a little over here, and then it could flick nicely up. So bent, and then, also her head and her neck just feel a little stiff here. Again, with the follow through, her head would be a little bit down, and then as she comes up, her body would settle, and then her head kind of a few frames later would come up. And then again at the end, just a little bit of a settle. There is a very slight one here on her body, but it's kind of only on her body as far as I can see. I mean, the leg's bending there, but it's reacting to the body rotation. So just a bit more of a gentle weight redistribution as she settles. Her arm could come down just very slightly as that settles into the final position. So it's a great first draft. I know it's not a polished one. And just a general note as well, just to be aware of the hair. As I did mention over here, it's a little heavy, but also here it's going through the arm. I don't know to what extent the hair was rigged, obviously, so that has its limitations, but also, for instance, here it flicks up quite violently. Again, it seems very heavy for hair, and I mean, I have a lot of hairs, so I know how it moves, and it's not generally such a heavy mass, so it wouldn't flick up as much over here. It would maybe a little at the ends because the ends are lighter, but generally it wouldn't be this huge block of hair flicking up. And over here it would settle then on her back a little bit more, not sticking up. Again, I'm not sure to what extent it's rigged, so I don't know if the bones go that far or what, but just something to be aware of. And then over here you could maybe just add a little bit of a swish, but that, again, I don't know what extent it's rigged to. On the whole though, it's a very nice shot. It's dramatic, it's got a lot of big movements in it. There's some good settling and some anticipation over here. And I like it where she gathers her energy to throw it, so it's a good job. So that is my quick review. It took longer than it should have just because of the technical glitches in the beginning, but hopefully the next ones will be easier and better, and there won't be all that business happening in the beginning now that I've gotten the hang of it, hopefully. But I hope that this was helpful. It can be good to see other people's work get critiqued just so that you can kind of recognize where you've made the same mistakes, or you tend to make the same mistakes, and remember, oh, I saw that person pointing that out, so let me remember not to do that in my own stuff. And it's also really good to practice your own eye at critiquing other people's stuff, because that helps you then critique your own stuff a little better. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for bearing with me in the beginning. I saw that we did lose a few watchers, and I don't blame them because it was tedious waiting for me to get the hang of it. But that is me. I'm Robyn, and thank you for watching. Bye.